Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Politics with Sherry Jacobus. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're not yet a subscriber, if you like what you see and hear here, I hope you'll hit that button, that subscribe button, and help me out. So we know that Trump is very agitated about the very successful No Kings protests around the country. The only people arrested were Trumpers showing up with guns. Yeah. Perfectly peaceful. So kind of hard to paint us as Antifa and terrorists and all this kind of, well, Antifa is fine, anti-fascist. Yeah, so now they're going to be investigating the frog costumes. They're doing anything they can. So when that didn't work to paint us as violent extremists and Antifa and terrorists, they went out there like Senator Mike Lee, the nerdiest, doughy white guy on the planet. Senator Mike Lee starts making fun of middle-aged people at the protest, just dancing, saying they have no rhythm. It's disgusting. These people are disgusting. So while Trump was agitated, he also was meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. All right. There are reports that there was lots of yelling and screaming and shouting by Trump. And Trump was playing that same game that he played with Zelensky that he and J.D. Vance did, I think it was in August, or a few months ago in the White House, where they said, you have no cards to play. And he was berating him for not wearing a suit. All that ridiculous. They were ganging up on him, bullying him, and they thought this was funny. This is what Trump thinks is negotiation. Sidebar here, a pretty big one. His so-called peace deal in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, gone. It lasted less than a fraction of a Scaramucci. And Israel is now saying, now that they've done the hostage exchange, they're going to go back to bombing in Gaza. So yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. And Hamas is also continuing it. So Trump has no clue how the Middle East really works. And this is a guy who is demanding the Nobel Peace Prize because of it. Trump is dangerously naive and corrupt and warped, and he should not be involved in any foreign policy negotiations. So back to Zelensky. We know what happened a few months ago. So now, this was on Friday in a private meeting. This is from Raw Story. They sort of collect everything. I like them a lot. In a private meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Friday, President Donald Trump urged him to concede a significant amount of territory to Russia or face destruction. A meeting that devolved into a shouting match with Trump cursing all the time, according to insiders who spoke with the Financial Times. He says, if Putin wants it, he will destroy you, Trump reportedly told Zelensky in a closed-door meeting. There is also reports that Trump did put his hands on Zelensky. So this is not somebody who can be our president. This is not okay. So they're saying that Trump threw Ukraine's maps of the battlefield during a tense meeting, urging Zelensky to surrender parts of the eastern Donbas region, which still remain under Ukrainian control. He wants him to just hand this over to Putin. So he was doing Putin's bidding. All right. So it's a non-starter, obviously. Ukraine isn't going to do that. They're not going to give it up without a fight. So an unnamed official said that Zelensky was very negative following the meeting, while noting that European leaders were not optimistic but pragmatic with the next planning step. So we've seen these different reports of Trump screaming at him. I only recently saw the one where Trump apparently physically did put his hands on Zelensky. This is something that has never, ever happened with any president in the Oval Office, at least not that we know about. So extremely, extremely disturbing. So, and here's a report from apparently Zelensky himself. The position of the Russians hasn't changed. They want us to withdraw from Donbas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Not the entire east, but specifically Donbas. That is completely from the Donetsk, I can't pronounce it, and Luhansk regions. I made it clear that Ukraine's stance in this context remains unchanged. I explained that both to President Trump and to Mr. Witkoff, we understand that Mr. Witkoff is simply conveying what Russia means. This does not necessarily reflect his own view. Come on, folks. We have Trump literally physically manhandling President Zelensky in the Oval Office, yelling and screaming at him to obey Putin and just hand over the parts of Ukraine that Putin wants. From this report, he says, moreover, I would say that these signals from the Russians are so far from reality that 10 years passed between the start of the occupation and the so-called referendum. Putin is claiming that he went in and had the referendum. Some of the people who wanted to become a part of Russia. Clearly, that's not true. This sounds like something Trump would pull, trying to say, oh, yeah, we have free and fair elections. So here's what I would love to see President Zelensky do. Because remember last time, I referenced that meeting a few months ago in the Oval Office where arrogant little J.D. Vance, they were ganging up on Zelensky for not wearing a suit. They were yelling at him then and saying, you have no cards here. And then a few weeks later, that's when they had that fantastic drone attack where Zelensky, something out of a Tom Clancy novel, seriously, where they somehow retrofitted these buses with these drones. And it was so cheap, like $500 a drone. So the whole operation cost under $50,000. They didn't need funding from the U.S., but they were able to go in, the top of the bus lifts off, these drones go out and destroyed decimated Putin's attack planes that he was using to kill Ukrainian men, women, and children. So this humiliated Putin. He was furious. He was humiliated by this. He didn't see it coming. And it was after that the trouble started for Trump, because clearly Putin realized that Trump was no longer useful to him, had outlived his usefulness, because Trump didn't know in advance that this was happening from one of our so-called allies. And the reason that Trump didn't know is because if anybody in our IC knew, in our intelligence community knew, they didn't tell Trump, because they know he's a traitor and that he would tell Putin. So this proved to Putin that Trump, his little puppet that he installed, that he cheated for, was no longer useful, and it looked like they were starting to make moves to get him out. And that's when Elon Musk, an ally of Putin's, all of a sudden picked a fight with Trump over budget cuts, and then start saying Trump is in the Epstein files. And then when it started coming out that the Wall Street Journal was hours away from printing something about the, Trump's message and little drawing to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday of the outline of a naked prepubescent girl. Yeah. Their secrets. Remember that one? All of a sudden, the Trump White House announces that Trump has medical issues. Well, we've known that Trump is sick for a long time. He's really unwell. He doesn't take good care of himself. He looks disgusting. We hear he smells disgusting. So he hasn't been physically well for a very, very long time. So all of a sudden they announced this, which looked to be like him saying, okay, guys, slow it down on releasing the compromise that you have on me from the Epstein files. I'm starting to lay the groundwork so that I can resign for health reasons. And I think that Trump has been back and forth on that, because he doesn't want anybody telling him that he has to resign. But he's playing that card to slow down the process of being fired by Putin, essentially. So now he has to deliver Ukraine, or he knows he's toast, that Putin can do him in, because Putin controls things, right? And that's why he was screaming at Zelensky. And I don't know if he pushed him, but there are reports that he physically did put his hands on President Zelensky, that Trump tried to manhandle President Zelensky in the Oval Office while screaming at him to give up parts of Ukraine to Putin. So I think it's time, I hope, that Zelensky has another one of these brilliant, almost impossible to conceive, low-cost, massive attacks on Russia. Remember, he was able to go inside Russia territory with this, which was just brilliant. Made a fool of Putin, made a fool of Trump. So this is the second time that Trump has behaved this way to Zelensky in the Oval Office, which shows Trump's desperation. Because if Trump can't come through for Putin on Ukraine, he's toast. He might get window cancer or stair cancer, or the big compromise is going to come out. And I think it's more than just Trump raping underage girls. I think it's much, much worse. And I've alluded to that in other posts. I won't say what I think it really is, but I think it's something that even MAGA won't be able, the most diehard of MAGA won't be able to be okay with. Because a lot of MAGA say they're fine if they find out that he was having sex with underage girls, which is statutory rape. So it's even worse than that. Otherwise, Trump wouldn't care. I mean, they're trying to lower the age of consent and do all these things so that if you're, a guy in his 50s and you're having sex with a 14-year-old girl, that it's okay. They'll do anything. And some MAGA guys like that. I think they want permission to do that. But overall, the Epstein files are a big, 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 big deal. And if Trump can't deliver Ukraine for Putin, he's got to go. And they can do it their way or his way. And the two ways of doing that would be that he would resign for health purposes so that JD Vance is in. And if he won't do that, they're just going to do him in with whatever they have on him with the Epstein files. Got it? I think it boils down to something. I think that's it's not even all that much of an oversimplified explanation of what's going on here. So I'm hoping that Ukraine, President Zelensky, has something else up his sleeve on par with that Trojan horse attack on Putin's attack planes. Something that Donald Trump does not need to be informed about or know about. And again, now that we're in this kind of warfare where you can do that kind of attack with all of the sophisticated military equipment, the expensive equipment that Vladimir Putin has at his disposal, while starving his own people, that the brilliance of something that humiliated him, of what Zelensky pulled a few months ago, right after Trump was screaming at him in the Oval Office and berating him and telling him he had no cards. Oh, honey, he had cards. So I'm hoping that President Zelensky has another card up his sleeve, another card trick, because I don't know, Trump deserves it. Does Trump not know who he's dealing with here? But it shows Trump's extreme fear and desperation to deliver Ukraine to Putin, because if he can't deliver Ukraine to Putin, he's a dead man walking, and he knows it.